Once this is done, they're ready to be fiberglassed together. I sand them just to rough them up a little bit with 36 grit sandpaper. It helps the fiberglass bind to it. It's like sanding a car before you paint it. Now you can see the fiberglass mat, and I'm mixing the hardener into the fiberglass resin. You just want to put enough fiberglass mat to hold these two frames together, because later you'll put a lot of it on to hold it into the dash. The fiberglass mat works a lot better than the fiberglass cloth because it has fibers that crisscross and go every which way. And the TV frames, after the fiberglass is dried, now I'm going to mount it to the inside of the dash. You'll notice the one corner creates a bind right here, so that little corner has to be cut off with a hacksaw. There will still be 3 screws holding that cathode ray tube in, so that won't cause any problem. See, with that corner gone, you got a real good fit now. And now it's ready to be bonded to the inside of the dash. And you want to make sure it's bonded well because it's going to hold 2 televisions. So again, I'm roughing this plastic up. I don't want it falling out. This fiberglass, when it dries, is harder to rock. Saturating the area with fiberglass resin. It'll help hold the mat in place until it is also saturated. I build up these areas with several layers of fiberglass mat. It helps to have pre-cut strips of mat before you start. That has been applied to fill up the low spots and bind to the TV frames. It's time for installation of the TV frames into the dash. I use small clamps to hold it in place until it dries. This is a pretty critical process. You don't want the frames to be misaligned. Once they're dry, you're not going to get them out. This can take a lot of readjustment. I use 2 clamps on the center section and 1 on each side. See how the frames line up as you look at it from the front. Notice that I wear rubber gloves when I do this. Or I should say they're latex gloves. Then wipe off the excess resin from the outside of the dash. Then let it set and dry overnight. Once it has dried, add some more fiberglass to the outer edges. This will bind the sides of the frame also to the dash and give extra reinforcement. If you get any resin in the screw heads, make sure you clean that out. Otherwise, you won't be able to get a screwdriver into it. When working with fiberglass, it's wise to use some type of a respirator, because as the fiberglass dries, it gives off a toxic vapor. Which was set overnight, and now it's dry. It's time to take the clamps out. Watch your fingers around these sharp needle-like fibers. Now it's time to clean up the edges of the TV openings. You can do that with this hacksaw and the 36 grit sandpaper. Do some more sanding on the edges. And sand these edges flat, because that's where the fiberglass is going to butt up against. These steps are very critical for the long run. Like I stated before, 36 grit sandpaper works real good rolled up for the corners. You can shape it for almost any area you want to sand. It'll go where your sanding block will not go. These surface imperfections can be filled in with body filler. If you're not familiar with body filler, you should become familiar with body filler, because you're going to be using quite a bit of it during the installation of the electronics and the plexiglass panels, as well as the TV chassis. The TV chassis will be bonded to the underside of the dash with just body filler. When you mix the body filler, mix up small batches of it because it does dry fast. Apparently body filler was invented in the 50s for fiberglass repair. Dash after the body filler has been sanded with 80 grit sandpaper. The entire dash has been sanded with 320 grit sandpaper and primed 3 or 4 times. I can't stress enough how important it is to prime, sand, reprime, wet sand, and prime. I prime it numerous times before I paint it because after it's painted, it's really too late unless you want to have to paint it again. Electronics manufacturer Modern Labs of Quebec made a manual on how to build electronics, which I will get into later. But in the manual is the template for the voice sequencer area. I have made a copy of it and attached it to the dash. The round circles are markings for the LED holes. Hole. Now I will drill through each hole. I start with a very small drill bit so as not to chip the gel coat in the dash. Once all the holes are drilled, you can take this template off. Now the holes are marked and you can continue drilling with successively bigger drill bits. The holes need to be drilled in the back of this. They're in the same place as the dash pad that's in the car now. And for some reason or another, this camera went in and out of focus when I was taping this. But you can get a good idea where the holes are drilled. And there are indentations in the fiberglass dash where to drill. We need to mark off where the 4 red lighted switches go. I usually do it by eye, but you can see with the tape measure, the first one starts about 2 inches from the edge. and find the halfway point, which is about 1 inch. Then mark a straight line across. Just center them so they're an equal distance apart. Then drill through the holes, starting with a real tiny drill bit. Using successively larger drill bits, you can drill out the holes without too much chipping away of the gel coat. Now drill out the holes for the TV controls underneath the dash and the extra support hole at the bottom of the passenger side of the dash. When installed in the car, a screw will go into the underside of the dash through this hole. It adds a great deal of stability. The dash is now ready to be painted. However, it doesn't hurt to look the dash over in detail one more time to make sure you haven't missed any flaws. This section is where the voice, display, and 4-step sequencer module will fit into. Any primer overspray on the inside of the dash should be sanded off. If any overspray is on the inside of the dash and the body filler is attached to it, it could come apart at some point. To add the 4-step power sequencer to the top. So now I'm marking off where to cut the hole.